It's Jets-Giants here in Florham Park. You're watching Training Camp Live presented by Honda. The New York Jets hosting the crosstown rivals, the New York Giants, here in Florham Park. If you're just joining us, which you would be because it's the beginning of the show, you got to stay tuned for the entire thing. We got Leger Douzable up on set. We got Quincy Onwunwa later. We got Brandon Marshall, Nick Mangold, and we got one-on-ones. O-line, D-line, D-line, O-line. You got to stay tuned for that. Dooz, you were in Carolina last week.
Yeah.
What are you looking for from the Jets today after seeing what happened last week against the Panthers?
Yeah, just executing at a high level. EA, we talked about this last time we did not only the podcast, but before the practice, the turnovers. We weren't accustomed to seeing the Jets turn the football over. If I'm not mistaken, 4 turnovers. Yeah. So you want to have a clean operation today on the offensive side of the ball. Also, defense, I think they started fast, right? I've seen clips on the internet of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed bringing the defense up after that first team period. I think they want to come out here and make a statement against a crosstown rival. Now, the Snoopy Bowl won't be on the line today, but anytime you get to play somebody in another color, the competition ratchets it up, and you also want to show well against your crosstown foe.
There are going to be some dogs here today, and we're hoping to see some dogs out there on the field. I'm going to be watching the Jets tackles. Tyron Smith, also Morgan Moses go against Thibodeau, of course, on the outside, and Brian Burns. And Brian Burns is a guy who got after the Jets' offensive line last year in Carolina, but this is a completely different offensive line.
For sure.
Kind of disappointed here from my perspective that Olu Fashanu is not going to go today, but just dealing with some minor soreness. Correct?
Yeah, right now we're watching Aaron Rodgers go through a couple cat cows before.
Ooh, Aaron Rodgers is going today, though.
Yeah, so, again, that's really what people are going to want to see is how Aaron Rodgers goes up against this Giants defense. And that guy right there, Quinnen Williams, against a Giants offensive line, Leger, that looks a little bit different too.
For sure. They've made some changes up front. We'll see where Evan Neal is. I know he's back practicing again. They brought in Van Roten as well to mix into that interior offensive line. Andrew Thomas, when healthy, the left tackle is one of the best in football. So I know we're talking about what matchups that we'd like to see. I can't wait to see our young ends, right? Michael Clemens and Will McDonald versus him because he is healthy now. It'll be a good litmus test for them going into the season, especially because Hassan Reddick is not here currently right now.
What do you like about Thomas's game? Second-team All-Pro back in 2022, and then he was limited to 10 games last season.
Yeah, I mean, just a freak athlete. Just a freak of a man. And the crazy thing is, when you look at him and Evan Neal, EA, they kind of had the same path, right? Because Andrew Thomas really struggled his rookie year, and people were wondering, was this a mistake by the Giants? And then he comes out, has this perennial All-Pro year, and gets paid, right? And Evan Neal went through the same thing, so they were hoping that he would take that leap. Well, Evan Neal hasn't taken that leap, and he was coming off injury. So this is a big year for him, too, in this offense. But when you talk about Andrew Thomas, the arm length, the athletic ability to get out in his kick step, right, to keep defensive ends at bay. But I think that's what really separates him, the athletic ability that he has and then the power behind it as well. Again, this will be a really good test for our young defensive ends.
I wanted to ask both of you guys, what did you think about Will McDonald's spin cycle?
It's a crispy spin. Right? Look, I don't know anything about defensive line play. Leger knows a lot about it. Doesn't it look like a new and improved spin move? Like, look, we knew the spin move was there last year. It just looks a little fine-tuned.
I mean, it's been there since Iowa State. If you go back and watch his tape in college, he beat tackles to a pulp with that spin move. And the interesting thing is he can hit the spin at 3 different levels. Sometimes he hits it right off the snap. Sometimes he hits it 5-yard deep. And then sometimes he hits it when he has to retrace and get back to the quarterback when he doesn't want to pass the quarterback. So I really loved his progression throughout the year. Heard the other day, not yesterday's practice because it was tapered down. The one before that, he really took over practice and had a few sacks in that one. So, again, another good test for this young defensive end against another color to see where he lines up at as we head towards the season.
And if you're just joining us, again, this is Training Camp Live presented by Honda. We have a loaded show. Stay tuned for one-on-ones. You'll see these guys right here, Elijah Vera Tucker, number 75 and company, against a very talented Giants defensive line. And I think We talked about Brian Burns. A lot of people talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. Dexter Lawrence.
That's the guy we better be talking about.
So I'm glad you said that. How good of a litmus test is this for a guy like Joe Tippmann, though? Because we've liked what we've seen out of Joe Tippmann so far throughout camp. This is really a different level.
Not just for Tippmann, for Elijah Vera Tucker and Simpson as well. I mean, Dexter Lawrence, a lot of people will say he's a top 3 defensive tackle. I know Quentin Williams is in that category as well as Chris Jones. So when you talk about the top 3 defensive tackles, he fits squarely in that conversation. So a guy that's not only just massive, right, but we call him one of those dancing bears, right? He's light on his feet, very athletic. He's not a guy that's just a plug guy, right, where he's holding up guys at the line of scrimmage. No, he's getting in the backfield, creating havoc, and getting after the quarterback. I talked about how nimble he is, and honestly, I probably think on a good day he weighs around 340. So guys like that should not be able to move as well as he moves. So, like, this would be a good test, not just for Tippmann, but for the other 2 guards as well, Elijah Vera Tucker and also Simpson.
Yeah, I think it's a good test for the Jets' offensive line. Aaron Rodgers was talking about, hey, the front line talent the Giants have. They are young in other areas,
Correct.
And I want to see how the Jets can potentially get after them in the back 7.
Yeah, Deonte Banks is a young guy they took in the first round. He's a guy that was actually perfect for Wink Martindale's defense. Now, he's no longer there, obviously, but he's a man-cover corner now. He can get a little handsy, but that happens with young guys. Fly has played a lot for them as well. Jason Pinnock, the old Jet,
Yeah, there you
is
go.
a starter in their safety. And Ethan, we were talking about the guy that they drafted in the second round who I have a high infinity of, and that's Tyler Nubin. He was, to me, the best ball-hawking safety out of this last draft class. He was my number 1 safety on the board. They needed that after they lost Xavier McKinney in free agency. They needed somebody that could go and take away the football. That's what Tyler Nubin can do. And then Drew Phillips, a guy at Kentucky, will be their slot corner. I was so impressed with him at the Senior Bowl. Love what he does. His movement skills are really good as well. So even though it is a young secondary, they got some skill back there.
Look, Leger, before practice, like a couple hours ago, you went to Twitter, you said, look, this is kind of what I'm looking for throughout practice. And one of the things that we've not talked about yet is probably one of the headlines here.
For
this
sure.
is Sauce Gardner, Malik Neighbors, the number, 6 overall pick in the draft, 7 overall pick in the draft. And he's, from our perspective, as in EA's in mind, from just being across town, seems like he's making a lot of plays, and we've seen it on social media. What do you expect from that matchup today? And how much can you actually read into what happens today?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it in one-on-ones that's highly competitive, right? Again, that doesn't have a bearing on how a guy is going to play in team periods or even during the game, but it really does put you on an island and shows your competitive juices and your competitive natures. When you look at Malik Neighbors, he is their number 1 offensive weapon, right? They lost Saquon Barkley, so they needed some explosion on that side of the ball, and we've seen highlight catch after highlight catch coming out of Giants camp, excuse me. But we also saw in that Houston Texans game, he showed really well, that back shoulder fade, and then even on that out route, Daniel Jones kind of left the ball inside when it should have been outside. I mean, he's just that good when he was able to reach back and make that catch for a 20-plus yard gain. So very excited to see him and Sauce Gardner, him and DJ Reed go at it, because I don't think Malik Neighbors has seen a corner like them. Now, Derek Stingley is really good as well, and he saw him a little bit in that game, but it'll be a different test out here versus our corners.
The truth be told, Greens, Douzable said he had to start the show off up top because he's going down to watch one-on-one.
And he's mad, and he's upset with Brandon Marshall, who's going to be on the show.
Oh, yeah, man. He's over there fraternizing with the Giants. I played longer with the Giants than he did. Like, you're over there fraternizing for?
Yeah, you know what? Well, maybe Caroline will ask him about that, or we'll let you ask him about that down on the field.
For sure.
Speaking of Caroline, let's head down to the field with Caroline Hendershot, with someone who was a Jet his whole career in Nick Mangold.
Yeah, I got Nick Mangold with me. Nick, you were just talking about how much bigger the Jets training camp has gotten, so we're excited to have you on board. But what are you looking for today, specifically from the Jets O-line?
I think just a competitive nature. I think when you have these joint practices, things can get a little chippy. But I want to see some good hard work along with, good physical work, but not getting too far. And just see how we look against other teams. You can go against each other all day long, but you don't really know until you go against another team.
Obviously, this O-line goes against a great defense every day, the other side of the ball. But what about the Giants' defensive line with Brian Burns, all of them that are bringing a different element, like you kind of said, to this practice.
Exactly, and I think that's where it's going to be a little tricky. You know, when you go into a game, you've done a whole week worth of study on guys. Coming into practices, you know, you're just coming in almost kind of blind. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I've never done a joint practice personally, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see how it works and see how it plays out.
Now, what have you thought of Joe Tippmann and his growth into his second year? Because obviously he kind of got thrown into the fire in his first year last year, but what have you seen from him just in, I guess, the first preseason game and some practices of the growth that he's had in the offseason? Yeah,
he's grown along great, and, you know, you see it in the work that he puts in. Like, he's been doing a lot of great work, did some great work this offseason, and you see it as we're going through this training camp, you know, and so I'm excited for him. I'm a big fan of his and want to see him do well. So I'm expecting big things from him.
Now, I'm interested in your opinion on this. Do you feel like you would want to be on a line that has had game reps with all starting 5 on the line, or do you feel like through practices, through joint practices, you kind of get those reps, and so you don't necessarily need those game reps?
I was always partial to game reps, just so you can see things happening when, you know, your quarterback could get hit. But, you know, I think you do what's best for the team. So if it's best that we don't go in there, then we do. So I always like games. You know, it's fun playing in front of the fans. So I was always a big fan of being in the games.
Awesome. Appreciate the time, Nick.
No problem.
All right, good stuff from Caroline and Nick Mangold. The NFL Fan of the Year, presented by Captain Morgan, is back. The New York Jets want to celebrate you and your dedication to the green and white. Submit your nomination at nyjets.com/fan of the year. You're watching Training Camp Live, presented by Honda. The New York Giants coming from East Rutherford to Florham Park for a joint practice with the green and white. We have Tony Richardson now on set here in Florham Park. Stay tuned for a lot more, including one-on-ones between the Jets and the Giants O-line and D-line. T-Rich, you've been at practice a couple times. What are we looking forward to from your eyes today?
You know, I'm actually looking for just some good, clean work, because you can't put a price on the type of practice you can have today, because, you know, obviously the preseason games, a lot of starters aren't getting a lot of reps. But when you get these one-on-ones and you get a chance to see someone in a different jersey, because I was at practice yesterday, and, you know, you can kind of tell, like, okay, we're ready for tomorrow. So, yeah, you're just looking for guys that, you know, obviously keep guys healthy. You don't want to see any injuries. And this really is kind of like your last dress rehearsal, because I'm not sure how much the starters are going to play in the last game. But just like you said, to see the one-on-ones, the pass rush with the linebackers and running backs, and one-on-ones with the receivers and cornerbacks, and definitely offensive and defensive line play. So it should be exciting.
There's Jets head coach Robert Saleh, 4th year at the helm here of the green and white. I wanted to ask you about Aaron Rodgers' comments yesterday, where he said this has been a hard training camp.
Yep.
This is one of the toughest, most difficult training camps that he's had in the past 7 or 8 years. And in fact, Saleh told Aaron Rodgers that we are 350 reps ahead of last year's pace.
Yeah, actually, I had a chance to talk to Coach yesterday. He said, I was standing by the offensive lineman, and I'm like, man, I need to stop losing weight because these dudes are too big. But he said, hey, T, we're ready. He said, these guys love football. They care about ball. And he said, we've been pushing them. We've been pushing them really hard. And he said, we're going to jump out the gate pretty quick. And that's what you want to hear. I mean, you're starting to see, like, you know, I don't want to go reference to the old team who I used to play for, but the Kansas City Chiefs, and you see their starters. You got Patrick Mahomes out there playing, taking hits. You got Travis Kelce and the behind-the-back stuff. But training camp needs to be hard. And those are the days I came up, and back in the day, it was obviously we didn't have these shells, and we didn't have the Guardian helmets. It was literally 2-a-days for 30 straight days. But that's when you want to come out of training camp ready to roll, and you don't want to get into the first regular season trying to amp up for the rest of the season.
I'm interested to see how the Jets' rushing attack does against the Giants, not only because they have a good defensive line, but because I feel like that's been one of the things that's been going so well for the Jets that maybe hasn't been talked about.
Yep.
With a guy like Braylon Allen, I mean, you were talking about how the offensive linemen are bigger.
Yep.
How about a guy like Braylon Allen? He's huge. He's 20 years old.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because I was watching the game at home the other day, and I was like, man, he looks like Brandon Jacobs. Like, he's a big boy, and he can get downhill, and that's a good thing. I mean, that's, to me, obviously everyone's talking about Aaron Rodgers, but if this running game really gets going, it opens up the entire pass game. I'm not saying that because I'm a former running back, but yeah, I'm excited for these running backs, and I think, I don't put I don't put like expectations, but I see we might have a 2,000-yard rusher this year. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to put it here now. You heard it here first.
Two schools of philosophy as far as the preseason and these joint practices. Thought Saleh was very interesting today at his news briefing prior to practice, saying that, hey, listen, there's some people think it's more valuable to get players out there on the field in a preseason game for about 10 snaps versus, hey, maybe his philosophy, he didn't say this, but he said other people think that if you're out here in a joint practice, it's more valuable getting 40 reps out here of hard work than maybe getting 10 actually in a game.
Yeah, I think it's more valuable to get the reps here because first of all, you're not getting tackled, you're not getting taken down to the ground, but these are full speed reps, and that's the thing. And you got to be a professional. You got to understand, like, okay, I'm not going past the whistle, no clean, no late shots, and different things like that. So this is the most like getting these 30 to 40 reps against Pro Bowlers and all pros and different things like that. And like you said, for the Jets offensive line today, this is going to be a huge test because there's some guys up front that can, obviously we know a few of them that can really get after the quarterback and obviously stop the run. So it's going to be an exciting day to watch.
Without knowing who's going to play Saturday in the preseason finale at MetLife on Saturday, if this is in fact like the last heavy practice for the starters, like how beneficial is it, in your opinion, T. Rich, if the Jets' offense or defense comes out firing, starts at a high level, and it ends at a high level too?
I think it's very beneficial because this is tape that you can build on, and that's the biggest thing. Every single rep you get, regardless if you're in your first year or if you're in your 16th year, these reps, like you said, these 15 to 20, these 30 reps against a different opponent, because like you said, in the preseason game, we might not even see Aaron out there at all, but these reps right here are going to be so valuable. And like you said, you're going against all pros, you're going against a guy in a different jersey, so these reps right here are so valuable. And also it just, you want to have a good taste in your mouth when you leave training camp. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're ready to roll, and you don't want to have any missteps. And like I said, we don't know how many reps the starters are going to play this weekend, so this right here really will be the last dress rehearsal. Yeah,
and he sounded indifferent about it. Like, if Robert Saleh said, hey, Aaron, go out there and play, he'd be out there. Yep. But if he doesn't play, he said he's totally fine. His body feels good. He thinks they've had a very good camp. And what we've seen lately, T. Rich, from Aaron Rodgers is that the arm has always been there, but we've seen the rollouts, also him escaping pressure, and he's been very comfortable in those situations. So you have to be very encouraged by what you've seen from Rodgers, not only throwing the football this summer, but also moving.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I, like you guys probably were, like, it's actually amazing the way he's come back. Like, it's literally nothing short than amazing. Not necessarily because of his age, but, how quick he was able to come back and, potentially could have played last year, from what everyone was saying. But that's the biggest thing, and that's, I've never really had any lower body extremities, but that's the biggest thing that guys that have had ACLs or ankles or different things like that, it's just like, getting back out and doing the things you used to doing. And obviously, Aaron's been great throughout the years, being able to get out of the pocket and things of that nature. Yep. And now feeling comfortable doing that, I think Jets fans should be pretty excited.
You're watching Training Camp Live, presented by Honda. We're taking a look at the linebackers, including number 56, who just went off the screen, Quincy Williams, 44. Jamie Sherwood's had a great camp. And if you're just joining us, 1, we have Brandon Marshall later in the show. 2, we have one-on-ones between the Jets' offensive line, defensive line, as well as the Giants. And that'll be an intra-squad drill right there. So I'm interested to see, we've talked a lot about the Jets changes too, but defensively, we have not talked about the Giants changes. You think about this Jets defense from what they did in the regular season game last year. You think about Saquon Barkley being on that team no longer. Now it's Devin Motor Singletary, who was with Brian Daboll in Buffalo with the Bills. You start to think about this Jets defense, and I know it's just practice. Outside of Malik Neighbors, Sauce Gardner, EA, like, what are the other matchups that you're really trying to key in on here?
I'm definitely keen on that one. But it's not just Neighbors against Sauce Gardner, because you're going to see Neighbors at times probably playing the slot. So you're also going to see Neighbors at times potentially against DJ Reed. So obviously your eyes are going to go to that. From a Jets defensive perspective, I think they have a lot of matchup advantages. That defensive line, we saw Quinnen Williams there early in practice. I mean, he's going to be a handful on the interior.
He's a handful for everyone.
Not just for the Giants, but
exactly.
for anybody, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I think last year I remember watching the Hard Knocks, and he literally dominated the Carolina Panthers. He was like, "Yeah, I think I got about 15 sacks today," but that's great though. You want to see? I mean, as Quincy goes, that's how I think that's how the team's going to go. So it's I'm excited. It's and that's the thing. Last year it was so encouraging. Obviously on the offensive side of the ball for the Jets, everything wasn't really clicking the way it needed to be. But just to see the defense show up week in and week out and just literally shut down teams, and so I think Jet fans should be definitely excited, and I'm excited to watch these guys out here today.
Greens, you talked about Tippmann before. Last spring we were talking about, hey, who's going to be the top center in that draft class?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to see both of those guys on the field today, Joe Tippmann and then John Michael Schmitz for the New York Giants.
Yeah, that was a big topic of, like, in the draft when both teams were in the market for a center, who would be the first one to go. The Jets ended up with Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin, of course. The Giants ended up with John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. And, we had Leger on earlier. He played for both the Jets and the Giants. For someone else who was once a Jet and a Giant, let's head back down to the field with Caroline Hendershot and Brandon Marshall.
Yep, we got Brandon Marshall joining the show. Brandon, you were here yesterday, came back for a second day. What, you couldn't stay away?
No, you know what? The truth is, I thought today was happening yesterday. I thought the Jets and the Giants were practicing yesterday. That didn't happen, so I said, you know what? I have to stay another day because I played with both teams. But you see where my alliance, what color am I wearing?
I know I see you're wearing green, but you were fraternizing with the enemy, says the upstairs patio boys. So I'm just saying, you were called out on it already.
Listen, I played for the Giants. Everybody knows that there's politics in the game, right? So
gotta give love to both teams.
Coach Dayball was my my offensive coordinator when I played for the Dolphins. Coach Groh, the receiver coach, was my receiver coach for the Chicago Bears, right? I have guys that train offensive, so you got to go over and show them a little love. But guess what? They got 10% of my time, and now the Jets is going to get 90.
There we go. That's what we like to hear. Okay, so I want to dive into some of the players that you're going to be watching today. Wide receiver Garrett Wilson, he's going into his third year. There's been a lot of chemistry with Aaron Rodgers already in camp. What are your expectations for him this year?
Well, the expectation is for him to take advantage of every opportunity he gets, right? He has that type of makeup, that mindset of taking advantage of his opportunities. Now, how big can this kid be? He can be the best. We know that. His ability, his heart is up there with the Justin Jeffersons, is up there with the Devontae Adams, and so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes into that, right? Obviously, the quarterback play, obviously the offensive coordinator and calling the plays and putting him in position, moving him around when he may be double. But the sky's the limit for this kid. We all know that. He just needs to take it one play at a time, one game at a time, and let's see what happens. But I'm excited to see him really break through this year. Obviously, he's gone over 1,000, but can he be a 1,400-yard receiver, a 1,500-yard receiver? I don't know. Aaron Rodgers done it with so many wide receivers. And so this is going to be a fun year for the Jets.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one to watch him specifically. Okay, let's go to the other team, the Giants. Malik Neighbors, he's obviously the hot name on the scene. What do you expect from him in his rookie year?
Yeah. He reminds me a lot of Jamar Chase. Strong, bulky, powerful. Even his mindset has a strong mindset. We got to see what Daniel Jones does, right? Daniel Jones, I'm not one of those guys that's ready to throw him under the bus or, I think everybody's throwing him under the bus. I'm not one of those guys. I want to see what he does behind a healthy O-line. I want to see what he does with a Neighbors. So Neighbors, it's on everything around him, his supporting cast, starting with Brian Dayball, then it goes to Jones. We know this kid is talented.
Now, how excited are you to watch him go up, whether it's Sauce Gardner or DJ Reed, go against
Today's going to be a day. This is what we all waiting for. One-on-ones is starting in about 2.5 minutes, right? And that's going to be the show. That's practice. After that, everybody can go home. And that's what I live for as a wide receiver. When I came out here every day, I try to put on a show in practice, even when it wasn't open to the fans. And my guy behind his camera would tell you, every day one-on-one, me against Antonio Cromartie, who's now a safeties coach here, Darrell Revis. Got to have it moment. So this is going to be spectacular. There's some other key matchups between the offensive line and defensive line, but the one to watch is definitely going to be Sauce versus Neighbors and even Jared versus their young corner over there. So
awesome. Well, appreciate the time, Brandon. And he said it best. We got like 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half at this point until one-on-one, so we're sending it back upstairs to you guys.
Thanks, B-Marsh. Thanks, Caroline. Kickoff is right around the corner. You got to be there for every big matchup this season with Jets 2024 season tickets. For more information on how to purchase, call or text 800 469-5387. You're watching Training Camp Live presented by Honda. Look, Bmar said it. One-on-one's about to start. Quincy and Nunwa on set here. Quincy got a little excited, okay? He was like, we're getting receiver? One-on-ones? It's O-line, D-line. We can't show 7-on-7, Q.
Yeah, I wish. I actually haven't seen it. I don't know what's going on. What's the plan now? Do they not do one-on-ones? I haven't been there.
In terms of receiver,
yeah.
It's just 7-on-7, and I just heard the horn, which means we're getting set
Yes,
for
sir.
one-on-ones. I would imagine the crowd is roaring here at Florham Park as we have a little crosstown rivalry practice, the green and white hosting the New York Giants. And so, we talked about, unfortunately for you, we talked about Malik Neighbors, we talked about Garrett. We're going to talk about the big boys up front a little bit. But before we actually see what happens, what were your thoughts on Neighbors coming out of LSU this year when you were studying the draft prospects?
Yeah, I liked him. I liked him as a guy that you can get the ball in his hands. He had explosive ability, right? A guy that can take the top off the defense, but also a guy that is not a bad route runner. Now, obviously, you had some other guys in that draft class that were supposedly better, like Marvin Harrison Jr. But Malik Neighbors had some talent on him, and I think he went where he was supposed to go. So it'll be interesting to see him today against Sauce and DJ Reed.
I don't know if fans are going to be mad, but it's 7-on-7.
You want to give him like a little play-by-play?
On adjacent fields. What I will ask, though, I'm going to flip it back to Garrett Wilson. Brandon Marshall had 1,502 yards receiving in 2015. That is the Jets single-season record. Is that on the table for Garrett Wilson in 2024? Breaking that record, setting a new one for the Jets.
We're bringing the heat on the
Yeah.
Chili's.
Oh, yeah. I want to get Quincy's thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're not the first person to ask me that. And if I'm being honest, I think it's there for him. I think with Aaron Rodgers, with the capabilities that he has with Aaron Rodgers and the talent that he has on his own, he's definitely able to do it. He's had 1,000-yard receiving seasons with multiple quarterbacks at the helm. So if he can have a consistent Aaron Rodgers out there, that 1-2 punch right there is ridiculous. I don't know if they can't. They should not be able. They should be able to do it.
Oh, but I just want to tell folks that roar of the crowd, that was for a completion to number 5, Garrett Wilson.
We can't, again, we don't come at us because we cannot show it. We're still providing the information. Right. That way here on Training Camp Live presented by Honda. Again, on this field over here, right over there, there's 7-on-7, which we can't show, and then there's some O-line, D-line stuff, which is on the left side of your screen right now. Number 62, nice to see him back in the lineup. That's Jake Hansen, who's missed the majority of training camp here. And, look, this is going to be a good test for the Jets. Right now, the Jets starting offensive line is not in there. Neither is the Giants starting defensive line, but reserves. And we can start to go through this here. I mean, you're looking – this is Max Mitchell right here on the left side. We don't know who's going to take the rep. It looks like Max Mitchell.
Yeah, Max Mitchell is an interesting case, right? Because him and Carter Warren, those are two guys that have kind of dropped down a little bit. Like, who's going to end up, taking that spot? Because you can only keep so many offensive linemen. Both guys drafted. Both guys have had some time with injuries. So they're really competing for those last couple spots on that offensive line.
That was a nice rep from Willie Tyler III.
Yeah. How encouraged have you been by Olu Fashanu, who's not going to practice today, because the Jets have been working him in at right tackle for the past week now? And, okay, you got your veterans penciled in and starter, Tyron Smith, obviously Morgan Moses, but now you have this young rookie who can be your swing tackle to start the year.
Yeah, and I get a lot of my offense defensive line information from dudes, and he's a guy that's told me that he's really impressed by what he's been able to do, right? A guy that has a great punch, right? Great length. He uses it well. Does a good job with his footwork. So he's an exciting player, as a young guy and a swing guy, right? They have Schweitzer as a guy that they assume was going to be the swing guy, right? So there's a couple guys that in case that doesn't work, they've got him. But I think he's doing really well in his position, especially playing on the opposite side. And I've heard that playing on the opposite side is really challenging for an offensive lineman.
We got another roar of the crowd. If you can hear it through the microphone, that was a completion. Aaron Rodgers to number 82, Xavier Gibson, which is nice to see him back in the fold here. He has yet to play in the preseason. He's someone who's dynamic with the ball in his hands. It seems like that he's going to take a next step in the offense, too. That was a nice rep from the new guy at left guard for the Jets, John Simpson, who got a lot of love from Aaron Rodgers, EA, the other week.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think he's the guy who's kind of flying under the radar, but he really found himself in Baltimore last year, breaking out. He's a big dude who brings a nastiness to the table. So the Jets offensive line, that is the biggest difference on this roster 2023 to 2024. No doubt about it. Not just from a starting perspective, but from a depth perspective.
And this is their best test today, Q, in terms of against the Commanders front, which is very talented, especially in the interior with Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Then you think about the other side in terms of the next practice, the Carolina Panthers. Derek Brown is the big guy there. But the Giants have the most complete front that the Jets have seen in terms of a defensive line.
Yeah, and Dexter Lawrence is a game breaker, right? A guy that's at D-tackle is one of the best in the game, right? They paid him for that, right? So it's a good test for them. They also have Kayvon Thibodeau, a young guy there that is coming along. So, it's going to be a good test for this offensive line. I think we have all the starters playing today.
Yep.
Right? So it's going to be a battle in the trenches.
Now we're taking a look at the Jets' defensive line here. That was Tanzel Smart. Yep. One of the matchups that Dews was talking about is Jermaine Johnson, number 11, who's in the background, and Will McDonald against a guy like Andrew Thomas, who is the starting left tackle for the New York Giants. That is the newest Jet, number 51, Jalen. I believe his last name is Twyman, if I'm saying that correctly. But, again, this is going to be the matchup to watch. It all starts up front for the Jets, whether that is on the defensive line or the offensive line. That was Eric Watts and Evan Neal right there, who Evan Neal listed as the backup right tackle on their depth chart.
Let's watch this one. This is looks like Will McDonald.
Yeah, I don't believe this is Andrew Thomas because that's not number 78.
We got robbed of that rep.
Yeah. Oh, wait, here we go. We're just resetting the ball here,
Yeah.
Okay. And we're resetting the camera.
Here we go.
There's a spin move.
Got him with the spin.
Okay.
Looked like a little bit of a hold there.
Yeah, something.
I shouldn't be doing the officiating up here. I know. Sam's all smart up. But
the refs are here, though.
That dude is so explosive.
Yeah,
oh, my God. Yeah. Hey, Jalen Holmes just tried the back-to-back spin move. Will said, look, I'm going to hit the spin move. Jalen said, I can do it, too. Will McDonald confirmed can do it a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you got to do it until they stop it if I'm Will McDonald, right? Until you stop that move, I'm going to continue to use it and perfect it.
That sounds like the horn. I imagine this is the last rep here. That's, again, Jalen Twyman.
He's getting a lot of work earlier.
Welcome to camp. There's a couple days left. And you know what? We heard the horn, but they're keep going, so we'll keep going right there. That's Eric Watts. Very nice rep there from the undrafted free agent out of UConn.
He is flashed.
That's going to be a tough position.
He's had a nice camp. So that's the bottom line, Q. We're looking at right now, August 27th, which is Tuesday. All NFL teams have to get their rosters down from 90 to 53. Now the Jets can come back and get a practice squad of a maximum of 17 players. 17. But where are the most interesting cuts going to be from a position perspective?
Well, I just talked about offensive line. That'll be an interesting one there, obviously. But then receiver, I'm always watching receiver. Like, who's going to stay? There's obviously – you have the top four guys. Who's going to be underneath? Who's going to be a practice squad guy? I can see some guys that are going to make a lot of plays this weekend ending up on the practice squad or on some other teams as well. DB, right? There's a little bit of a battle there. There's some guys that I want to see. Obviously, Quantez Stiggers is a guy that we talked about his name a lot. JBC, right? Isaiah Oliver is a guy we haven't seen much of, right? So some of those guys up there, I don't know. I don't think Oliver will be cut, but just talking about the battles in that room.
I'm really looking forward to watching Brandon Codrington return again Saturday night after what he did last week.
Yeah, and I think with a guy like Codrington, so much we've made about special teams, but it's also what can you do not just as a returner, also then you factor in how much of a factor are you in the defense, how much are you factoring all core four special teams. Right now we're at a special teams period in practice, and this is going to be the image that you're going to be left on. Aaron Rodgers on the right-hand side of your screen, Brian Burns, Spider on the left-hand side. And look, we appreciate you tuning in to Training Camp Live presented by Honda. Jets-Giants practice about to really get underway here shortly. If you want your full coverage, check out NewYorkJets.com, and we'll see you soon.